Hi guys, welcome back to Kick It with Ken, our Mental Health Awareness Month miniseries. Today is the final episode. We have a very special guest, Canadian legend, Olympic alpine skier, mom of three, safe sport, advocate, and survivor, Allison Forsyth. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so I was first introduced to you last year when our team had our first safe sport meeting, and we had one again at the start of the season. And, growing up with national teams and just being in the college system, we've always had to fill out the safe sport PowerPoints and the quizzes for it. And so this was my first time having an actual meeting. And so being able to hear your story and you being so open and so vulnerable about everything that you've been through in your career in alpine skiing and sharing your story with us and all the work that you're doing now to put the athletes first and to just create a better environment because of all the systemic issues that have been just happening in sport forever. So I think your story is so powerful, and I just want to thank you for, being a person in this space who is, fighting for athletes and fighting for our environments. I think it's something that's really powerful, and people like you are so important. So I just wanted to thank you.
Aw, thank you. That's so kind of you to say. And from one, high performance athlete to another, both of you and I would likely say we have incredible experience, or I have had incredible experiences in sport, but there is another side to the culture that we need, in my experience, as you saw, like a lot more education and sort of real talk about what that is and how to prevent it. So
Exactly. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. And I think it's something that's not really talked about and something that is really important. So I kind of want to start from the beginning where you started in your career. And I know that you kind of grew up with a skiing family. You had older siblings who skied. I saw that your parents had the first ever ski club in Mount Washington. So, being that young kid starting skiing at what age did you start? Probably like 2 or like
2, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think a bit
Like,
younger than 2, actually. Yeah.
yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Like, can you talk to me about who young Allison was when she first started skiing? And I mean, we probably don't remember at 2, but who that young girl was who just got into the sport and was just, excited to ski with her family. Like, what was that like growing up?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm the youngest of 3. My sister and my brother both, we say ski raced.
Yeah.
My brother actually went Div 1 for alpine skiing. So growing up, and the really cool thing about alpine skiing is that it's very much, as you mentioned, like a recreational family sport. You go to the mountain, you ski. It's not scheduled as much. So every weekend we drove 2 hours in each direction. From Vancouver Island. I'm from Nanaimo, to Mount Washington. And as a young kid, I actually remember probably being about 5 or 6 years old. And the mountain back then was sort of, that a certain chair was for extreme skiers only. And all I remember is being in the lineup to get on that chair by myself. And I remember thinking as a 5-year-old, like, why is everyone staring at me? Like, this like childhood trauma. It's like, why is everyone staring at me? And then I realized it's like they couldn't believe that a 5-year-old was about to get on that lift. So
Right.
like many sports, but especially in skiing, when I don't remember learning, like I learned to ski at the same time I was learning how to walk.
Right.
I just progressed, and it's just what we did and what we love to do as a family. So I don't even think I realized I was good at it or strong at it till other people started to recognize before me, if that makes sense.
And like you said, you being that 5-year-old going down a mountain where everybody's looking at you kind of crazy. But I think when I look back to watching the Olympics and watching alpine skiing and sports like that, I'm always so amazed in just like the fearlessness, the speed you're going down the hill, the precision, everything that goes into it. It's just always amazed me. So I always have so much respect for you athletes and, having older siblings that did ski competitively as well. Is that something you always aspire to do? Is like playing, representing Canada and being on the world stage, was that always a goal of yours? Or you're just, like you said, it's a family thing, this is just what we do?
Yeah, I find there's a lot of times where we think, and this could be totally different for you and many athletes, but what I find most often, which is what my experience was with an older sibling who was strong at the sport.
Yeah.
I remember just being like, well, he qualified for this and got a cool jacket. I want the same cool
Yeah.
jacket. And so, I work in sport, culture, ethics, safe sport. I talk a lot about outcome based parenting of sport, all of these things. And I'm like, kids are kind of simple.
Yeah.
Like, I just wanted to get to the next level where he was at,
Right.
and he sort of led the way. And I, like, honestly, it was like the uniform. I'm like, ooh,
Mhm.
that jacket's cool. If I make that team, I get that jacket. So
Right.
I didn't have those long term aspirations that maybe some athletes have from a young age. I just was trying to follow my brother's footsteps. I was lucky
Exactly.
that way.
And I can relate to that as well. Like, I had an older sister who played soccer growing up too, and I just kind of
Mm,
wanted to do everything that she did. So I can relate to that and just, aspiring to just move up and compete and have that mindset from a young age. And so I also, like, how did you move up in, like, being that young skier, like, growing up? Who noticed, okay, this girl is really good and we want to continue to progress her in her age group and just move her to the next level?
So this is also something I'm very passionate in sport is staying local for as long as you can. So my
Okay.
mountain was quite literally a ferry ride and about 3 hours away from the closest ski club. So
Okay,
there wasn't
wow.
really a choice of where I was going to ski.
Mhm.
And we were considered, you hear this, I obviously work in soccer, like in
Mhm.
soccer too, like small town, or
Okay.
my
Yeah.
boys are in hockey. It's like the right atmosphere doesn't necessarily mean a different location, and I don't
Mhm.
believe in, like, plugging kids, where I'm getting with, like,
Yeah,
traveling around
exactly.
at 10 years old to try to
Mhm.
find the best team of
Right.
10-year-olds. So here's my
Mhm.
point. Um, I like I said earlier, I think some people on my own mountain, like Mount Washington, recognize that I was strong,
Mhm.
so I only trained twice a week, which
Mhm.
sort of blew everyone's mind when I started competing in Europe because, they've
Yeah.
been skiing 7 days a week,
Wow.
and the second day, I just had a ski instructor who was the best ski instructor on the hill just,
Mhm.
like, take me out and a couple other athletes and just ski. So I
Yeah.
also had a really cool experience of training by accident,
Mhm.
by just actually skiing.
Yeah.
It's like because we go down the gates, right? So I
Exactly.
would say that, I'm very passionate. I am with my kids now. They are what you consider to be very strong hockey players,
Mhm.
and we stay local. So no matter
Yeah.
what team wants them, they play within the two communities that are right by where me and my co-parent lives, and
Mhm.
that kind of boggles people, and you know that from your sport as well.
For
It's
sure.
like,
And
yeah.
just from my experience as well, it's like there are girls who are from Toronto and joined the Whitecaps Academy and would stay with
Mhm.
host families to in high school. And playing for Canada, they wanted me to get better training, so I'd go to Montreal and have to, like, my dad would come with me and I'd train at their center there. So I understand that, but where do you think, sometimes they do think the better training is in other places. So
Mm.
how do you draw that line and, make that decision?
Yeah, oddly, I'll say, stay local, but when I was
Mhm.
15, I did move.
Yeah,
So I think there's a
to
time,
Whistler, right?
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, moved to
Mhm.
Whistler,
Yeah.
and that was we could have a whole podcast about that experience because this is
Mhm.
in the 90s where I lived alone with no parents. There was no
Yeah.
billeting.
Mhm.
So that was interesting.
Yeah.
However, um, I was only there 1 year before I made the provincial ski team anyway, which I could have made from anywhere. So it was
Yeah.
like this feeling that we had to go to a better center, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Yeah.
But I probably would have made the provincial team without that. So I do
Mhm.
think there's a time and a place.
Mhm.
And I think honestly, it's it is not easy to have a child billeted out. As a parent, I think about a lot of things and in the work I do about
Mhm.
sending my children away to live with another family.
Yeah.
And then I think as a child, that's why I always say child. It's interesting because we'll say athlete. So just think about this for a second. We always say
Mhm.
athlete or high performance youth athlete.
Yeah.
And when I'm working in safe sport, even with our national teams, our,
Mhm.
our youth teams, like
Mhm.
you experienced,
Yeah.
I will always tell our staff, like, we are dealing with children.
Yeah.
And they go, "What?" Because
Mhm.
you and I show up at 15, like, we've got it together,
Yeah.
and we get on planes, and we're
Mhm.
traveling the world with staff,
Exactly.
but we're still children,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
it's such an interesting experience because when you are that young and, you know, like you said, you moved to Whistler and were living by yourself, you made the national team at 17 years old and um you're still like probably the youngest person in that environment or traveling with all these people
mm,
and stuff like that. So um it's it's weird to look back and think how young you are, but you feel like, I'm training at the top level, I'm playing at the highest level, so you feel like older than you could think you are, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, we could get right into it quite easily in
Mhm.
that, you know, in my sport, travel was a cultural thing from a
Mhm.
very young age where we were
Yeah.
sent on the road with staff or
Mhm.
coaches. And
Mhm.
as you know, and your listeners and viewers should know, like I am a survivor of sexual abuse from
Mhm.
a predator within my sport.
Yeah.
So if I reflect back, there is zero, obviously, like zero responsibility I put on my parents.
Yeah.
I was in a national team environment; they weren't around.
Mhm.
However, there is a piece of like when you get sent away from home, or in my case, left home at
Mhm.
such a young age, you
Yeah.
think you're so grown up, and athletes are actually way more vulnerable to that type of maltreatment
Mhm.
and any all others because we want to win and we think we've got it all together and like
Mhm.
again, we're still just children and we need protection and we need adults to look after us, even when
Mhm.
we show up like we don't.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Um, and it's interesting being in those environments and, you know, being on your own and there's adults that are supposed to be protecting you. Your parents are giving their kids away to these people that they're supposed to trust. I think as athletes we have, these ideas of our coaches that, we trust them, we're supposed to listen to them, obey them, and what they say is right. So I think even looking back on a lot of situations, it's like that was not okay in those moments and stuff like that. And so, how do you recognize being so young, like maybe this isn't right? Like, this doesn't feel right. Who do you reach out
Mm.
to? How do you go about that?
It's such a fine line between with boundaries around what parents should trust when a
Mhm.
child 16 when I'm talking 16, 17, right? This
Mhm.
is still kids and this is
Yeah.
actually a very vulnerable age for some bad things to happen in
Yeah.
sport.
Mhm.
The parents want to trust the organization and then the organization wants to trust the parents, but
Mhm.
there's a big thing here, and I'll just be clear about this, that um, we get sent around the world in hotels and on planes as
Mhm.
like semi-professional athletes, and
Yeah.
there's not enough attention to, like I said earlier, like that we are still very vulnerable teenagers. Like,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we need more chaperoning and support. And I'll be honest, as I always am, Canada Soccer, where I've done extensive work, does a very good job
Mhm.
with kids overseas. Because sometimes, obviously, as you know, we take children to some pretty vulnerable countries and
Yeah.
risky places.
Mhm.
I was very impressed with the protection of children compared to other sports.
Mhm.
However, um, I had a parent call me once the night before one of our teams was traveling, and they
Mhm.
said, we were looking at the news, like, will it be safe over there? And so,
Mhm.
what I recognize is parents don't want to ask questions that they should ask and have a right to know
Yeah.
because they're fearful that might mean their kid won't have a chance.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Like,
No, yeah, for
there's
sure.
like, I'm like, no, you deserve to know
Mhm.
which we have a very
Yeah.
robust safety plan in place,
Yeah.
but the parents don't want to ask.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I also think it's creating a space where the parents do feel comfortable that they can ask. I remember
totally.
growing up in training, playing for the provincial team, we'd play soccer in the dome, and they would say sometimes, like, "Yeah, parents aren't allowed in the dome," you know?
Hmm.
So it's just the coaches in there, you know what I mean? It's pretty, like, strict environment, so I think as a parent, you don't want to probably risk your kid. You want to see your kid do well, and so you don't want to cross that boundary. But it's also like this is my child. This is the person I'm supposed to like look after and make sure that they're in the hands of people that I can trust. So I think it's creating more space for that. And I
Yeah,
honestly, I feel
yeah.
like growing up, looking back, there hasn't really been much
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, and I'm
Mhm.
obviously older than you, and we've come a
Mhm.
long way, believe it or
Yeah.
not, but I think here's the key thing. Parents, if I were to give any advice, is absolutely care about your child's well-being if they're protected physically and psychologically,
Yeah.
where why those coaches probably didn't want parents in the dome is when
Mhm.
they decide they're also coaches,
Yeah.
and they
Exactly.
start to get intrusive
Yeah.
around those boundaries. So
Mhm.
I always encourage parents, like, find out the policies, find out how your children are protected. You have
Mhm.
every right to ask questions like that, but when you step over that boundary and try to think you know more than the coach,
Yeah. Exactly.
that gets
There's a lot of
challenging,
that as
right?
well in the
There's
sport
a
as
lot of
well.
that in sport. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna take it back to you. You said this to us in our Safe Sport meeting, but you also
Mm,
said it was CBC. You said who you would have seen on TV as an athlete who was top 10 in the world,
mm,
multiple world championships, Olympic Games, hands in the air, smiling and waving to the crowd. On the inside, I was incredibly sick. I was incredibly mean to myself, practiced self-harm and self-punishment. And I felt like sometimes I didn't deserve to be here. And I think from the
mm,
outside looking in, we see you as the Olympian, we see you with the medals and um, all your success that you have gained in your career. And we don't see the athlete as a human. And so I think my question is, when did you see that shift within yourself?
mm.
And do you feel like it impacted you in any way, like while you're skiing or just in your just daily life?
Yeah, I would say, I went through my whole career really
Mhm,
unhealthy
mhm,
mentally, with I'm very open about quite a few undiagnosed mental illnesses, not just
mhm,
mental health concerns.
mhm,
Um, but the sexual abuse I suffered was covered up by the organization for
mhm.
17 years. So
Yep,
basically, that was my entire career.
yep,
So what I'm trying to get across in that for messaging in sport is there
mhm,
is no correlation between a happy and healthy athlete and a
mhm.
successful one if the only thing we're using for success is scoring goals or winning races.
Exactly.
Tracking it's like,
Mhm,
like parents or anyone think, well, because you're the best in the world at what you do, I could say
mhm,
the same about you and your teammates. It means
mhm.
you must be happy and healthy. And the
Yep,
environment of sport, whether it's abusive or not, the pressure, the day to day where everyone
mhm,
thinks we're living this glamorous life, but it's
yep,
really hotel room to hotel room and protein mix to bed,
yep,
right?
mhm,
Um, so when people see it from the outside, I just really want people to know that we have to protect. I always say our athletes need to be as happy and healthy on the inside as they project they are on the outside.
mhm,
You can't take it for granted. And when I'm with our national teams in soccer or any national team I work with, I walk into a room and when I hopefully come out and see you all in person, I'll sit down
mhm.
and be like, I'll probably be like, "How are you?
Yeah,
How's it going?" Like,
mhm,
I don't care how well you play, right? And
yeah,
nobody really should. It's about
mhm.
your mental health and are you having fun at all levels of
Exactly.
sport, right?
Yep. And I think the game does, or the sport gives you so much perspective and, the highs, the lows, injuries, and through it all. Like, so it is important to have people like you who actually are like, so how are you doing? How was your mental? And so I feel like,
Mm,
like you said, Alpine Canada knew what was happening and covered it up. And it's always mind boggling to me. We see this with gymnasts, we see it
mm,
like all over in sports, how these organizations will know what's going on, but just continue to cover it up in order to keep their face, keep their name, and continue to just take advantage of these athletes. So, why do you think that these systems continue to care about performance more than the athlete?
mm. It's interesting. There's so much I could say. I've worked with so many organizations now on this.
Mhm,
Obviously, my direct experience, which was
mhm.
not positive.
Yeah,
One thing I think is clear is that we call it organizational protection, whether that's
yeah.
reputational damage.
Mhm,
It's not just the individuals working within the organizations that are making personal decisions. They are
mhm,
influenced by legal counsel,
mhm,
policies that are developed
mhm,
primarily to protect the organization over the athlete.
mhm,
So it's not, I always say, like, a national sport organization, in my direct experience, is not full of a ton of horrible people that are trying to do horrible things
yeah,
personally. The
mhm,
whole system is set up where, if you have a, a case of abuse, you're going to get your funding taken away. And that is
mhm,
completely backwards
yeah,
because abuse cannot be prevented
mhm,
100%.
yeah,
So a case of abuse coming to light within an organization actually means someone felt safe to report it. So
exactly.
we're still backwards.
Mhm,
We're still like expecting organizations to do nothing wrong.
mhm,
But at the end of the day, I always say, like, when I'm counseling them, obviously, and I coach a lot, I'm like, do the right thing.
mhm,
Do the right thing because they
right,
get skewed into what sometimes other people are telling them or funding.
mhm,
And it's like, if we all just did the right thing,
yeah,
we wouldn't have a problem. Right.
exactly. And you would think that it would be common sense, like, forget the funding,
Mm,
like, this is an athlete's well-being, this is the life that is at stake, and
mm,
so, you know you spoke to us about one of your physios or your trainers noticing that something wasn't right with you. And can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I've done a lot of healing, so I can sort of observe myself from the
Mm-hmm.
outside now.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, I'll just say the first like woman staff member I'd seen in 5 months. So let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
Like my skiing, my sport is still predominantly coached by men
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
men physios. So,
Mm-hmm.
but what she noticed was obviously I looked very withdrawn, which I
Mm-hmm.
talk to people all the time about the physical signs. My hair was falling out. I'd lost about 10 to 15 pounds.
Yep.
Um, I was very depressed. I wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
put that language to it. And she
Mm-hmm.
simply just said, "What's up?" And it
Mm-hmm.
came like pouring out of me. And I did not feel safe. Obviously, he was there in the environment. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going to report, to him or to
Mm-hmm.
whomever else. So it
Mm-hmm.
was this representation of someone actually just caring about me
Mm-hmm.
that like was all it took, so to speak. But it was
Yep.
quite shocking that no one was even noticing in a high performance environment the physical
Right.
changes that were happening with my body
Mm-hmm.
or tuning in that something could even remotely be wrong. And I think that was
Mm-hmm.
just a lack of really coaching again at that time, but I think it
Yep.
still exists, like really coaching the athlete as a person as opposed to the machine that is out there to try to win, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so from that conversation, were you able to, go to the higher ups and get a resolve, or what was the outcome of that?
It wasn't good.
Mhm.
So, um, and this has all been taken through courts and everything, so it's not
Mhm.
just my side, but
Mhm.
basically, I was told by the president of the organization and the man that was
Mhm.
hurting me and multiple
Mhm.
of my teammates that,
Mhm.
to your point, if I said anything, if I went to the media, like their
Mhm.
words were, "We need to work together on this."
Yep.
And I remember looking at them being together on what? And
Yep.
almost immediately, I'll say this on behalf of myself, and actually, I would say on many survivors I've interviewed or
Mhm.
worked with, but
Yep.
the level of self shame is already there. The
Yep.
level of self blame is already there.
Mhm.
So you actually have to over support an athlete
Mhm.
in being able to come forward.
Mhm.
And this was the exact opposite, which
Right.
was nothing happened to you. We can't say anything. Go along with this, or you won't have a career. Like it was
Mhm.
that blatant coercion.
Mhm.
Um, so that's why it took 17 years, and it wasn't until, and I heard over the years like rumors of other girls, so to
Yep.
speak,
Yep.
that I know are very common in a lot of these serial cases.
Mhm.
But it
Mhm.
wasn't until one of his victims saw him coaching again and hadn't seen him in 17 years, and he was showed up coaching 12-year-olds again,
Mhm.
that she went to the police. And that was only, gosh, only about 7 or 8 years ago now. So
Mhm.
it went a long time, and there was, multiple victims, many more than what went to the criminal trial because of,
Mhm.
evidence and all of this. But
Yep.
yeah.
Mind-boggling that it would take so long and that they would try to just cover it up and not take any accountability in the fact that he would be seen coaching years
Was
later and
like I knew what had happened to me, but again,
Mhm.
the self shame and blame is
Mhm.
thick, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Led to a lot of my mental illness and challenges.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, I was hiking in my home in Vancouver, and
Mhm.
one of my very close friends who's a survivor of the same person,
Mhm.
she called me to tell me about something I didn't know that he had done to a girl a long time ago. And this
Mhm.
is going to sound strange, but stay with me. I've heard about this a lot where it's almost like you wake up your brain wakes up and you
Mhm.
realize how bad your own victimization was when you hear about
Mhm.
other people.
Yep.
So it's kind of like that cult philosophy. Like, I'll just be honest, like
Yep.
the only way I can explain it is like mind control. Like,
Yep.
I couldn't trust my own thoughts
Mhm.
psychologically. Like, he was making all the decisions for me, all of the things, not just
Mhm.
the sexual stuff.
Mhm.
So it wasn't until I started to hear about all these other girls having such a similar story as mine that I almost understood my own
Mhm.
story.
Yep.
Um, because you know how it is, trauma, disassociate, downplay, no big deal. Meanwhile, it was
Mhm.
all coming out in my, physical challenges and eating disorders and a lot of other psychological issues I had. But
Mhm.
if you saw me during my career, you would be like, well, Allison's one of the best skiers in the world. She's got it all together. Look at her go. But
Right.
that was on the outside. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you were able to still experience so much success in your career, but still be dealing with all of this behind the scenes. Um, and you end your career, you have a bad injury. I think you try to make it back, try to come back, but ultimately just end up retiring. How was your mental after you were done the sport?
Oh, terrible.
Mhm.
So I'm not trying to be light of it, but
Mhm.
um, I thought I'd prepared. You know, I did
Mhm.
school, I did my real estate license. I was like, I'm
Yep.
not gonna be that athlete that has to retire and not know who they are in this world. That's
Yep.
not gonna be me. And girl, it
Yep.
was so me. It
Mhm.
was, who am I? What value do I have to add? Which
Mhm.
is why when I do a lot of education. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know how you felt when I mentioned this with you and your awesome team, but
Mhm.
how your identity collapsed by the age of 8 or 9. So if I had
Mhm.
said to you, Kennedy, who are you? You would say, well, I'm a soccer player, probably by the
Mhm.
time you were like 8,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you're flash forward 28, 30. That's your entire life that you've identified as what you do.
Mhm.
And suddenly your choice or not, injury, don't make a team, like retirement is right in front of you.
Mhm.
Yet we think in sport, athletes can separate the personal out of the professional. I'm
Yep.
trying to get people to understand it's actually kind of like, not to be geeky, but neurologically impossible,
Yep.
right? Like,
Mhm.
my son's over here, I'm telling him to be quiet. He's 15. If he rolled in here right now, I should bring him in and be like, Riker, who are you? And he'd be like, I'm a AAA hockey player, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so it just is what it is. So we have to be
Mhm.
super careful as we're going through sport to know that sport's not all there is.
Mhm.
Then when we retire, I've seen a lot of mental health challenges with
Mhm.
retiring professional and Olympic athletes or any athlete, even
Mhm.
15-year-olds ending, it's really tough.
Exactly. And I can relate to that myself and just a lot of athletes in general. It's the only thing we've been doing since probably a toddler. I started playing soccer
Mhm.
at 4 years old. And so it
Mhm.
wasn't until a few years ago when I had a really bad concussion. I was out for a year and a half. I didn't know if I
Mm.
was going to play soccer again, is when I really had to think and sit with myself like, who am I outside of the sport? And so it's a really hard thing to conceptualize and just understand and just figure out who you are. So, like, what advice would you give to athletes who are still in the sport and just, you know, think their identity is pretty much their
Mm.
sport? Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was talking to our youth teams about this at Canada
Uh-huh.
Soccer. It's like when I work with athletes on their goals, I make
Mhm.
them do 3 buckets, which is
Yep.
sport is only one of the 3, and I put them on equal footing. So
Yep.
with kids, I do sports, school, and hobbies, and it's
Mhm.
fascinating. I work with gymnastics.
Yep.
It's fascinating to see like an 11 or 12-year-old, they're training 25 hours a week and they have no
Mhm.
hobbies,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So it's, I don't know if it's advice. Like you could give it's really just understanding that we
Mhm.
and being treated by our
Yep.
parents, by coaches, by everyone, by me who's coming over to say hi to you all, like
Mhm.
being treated as normal human beings where
Right.
sport is like it is what it is.
Yeah. Mhm.
From the get-go. Like when I work with coaches on, positive reinforcement coaching model, I'm like,
Mhm.
your kids have to know you think they're cool kids like 8 times a day.
Yep.
Like,
Mhm.
because they're gonna get stuck in like, I'm not playing soccer well enough. My parents are yelling, my coach is mad, and
Exactly.
that just keeps going and going, right?
Mhm. And so I really agree with that because it's just important to have other things that you can fall back on and have the people around you not to just identify you as just one thing. So I think that's really important for the people around as well. And so, you know, can you talk to us about how you got into working with Safe Sport and what led you to get into this space?
Yeah,
Mhm.
by accident, like many
Mhm.
things in my career, but,
Mhm.
so about a year after our criminal trial ended, he was sent to
Yeah.
prison. A bunch of us survivors, we just got on a
Mhm.
phone call and we're like, "Interesting, why isn't Canada doing anything to make
Yeah.
sure this doesn't happen to anyone else again?"
Mhm.
And that's kinda how it started, and what did it
Yeah.
look like? It looked like me getting thrown into committee meetings, meeting with sport ministers, I
Yeah.
don't understand politics, I had to learn really quickly,
Mhm.
and just sort of starting and just kept pushing, like,
Mhm.
pushing and pushing and pushing for, like, as you heard me educate, like, the real conversation about what we're
Mhm.
talking about,
Right.
how it won't be solved with a policy,
Mhm.
it won't be solved with a formal complaint. It's about the
Mhm.
culture of sport and understanding what needs to shift. So
Yeah.
I I also like to stress because I think sometimes I can show up like I have it all together, like, and
Mhm.
I don't. And I think
Mhm.
that's also really important that some nights I lie in bed and I'm like imposter syndrome
Mhm.
or who am I? Why would you
Mhm.
listen to me? Like we all have that. So I just want to
Mhm.
normalize that. Like,
Yeah.
but for me, it's just this like, I love it. I
Mhm.
heal through it. And I've always known since I was little that anything I did as an adult, I wanted to be in service of others.
Mhm.
So it's a natural fit, but some days are really hard. I'll be honest.
I remember just watching your presentation to our team and just
Mhm.
thinking like, wow, like you are someone who's so powerful, inspiring, and it's like it's so
Mhm.
important to have people like you in these spaces because you've lived it and so you know what's needed. What would you say athlete protection looks like outside of just the policies, and what do you think these organizations are missing or just need to grow in?
Yeah, so the black and the white is
Mhm.
like an hour-long training module that no one pays attention to. Okay, I'm just being
Mhm.
real, like, and it's not relevant. So the new
Mhm.
training I'm developing is much like you saw me give with your team. It's like,
Mhm.
here's the real deal. Let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Then you've got a policy that no one reads. So I'll just share this. It's the middle ground.
Mhm.
The microaggressions, the intercompetition and interpersonal relationships between
Mhm.
even at your level, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
you're competitive people within a
Yeah.
team.
Mhm.
It's going to naturally bring up conflicts, personality trait differences. So the
Mhm.
culture, and I know that word can be really big, but
Mhm.
like the team culture is absolutely critical. And
Mhm.
the coach is reinforcing we're not just here to win. I'm not just going to play the best player. And you got to,
Mhm.
whether it's suck up to me to get on the
Mhm.
field or whatever that looks like. If we have
Yeah.
a toxic culture, you're going to have maltreatment. It's just a matter
Mhm.
of time, like
Yeah.
serious maltreatment. So I
Mhm.
don't think we're spending nearly enough time on creating almost like requirements for cultural health within
Mhm.
teams,
Yeah.
as opposed to we'll get a new coach in and they'll bring in their whole philosophies. And I'm not talking about soccer here. Every sport does
Mhm.
this. It's like when I work with
Exactly.
universities, it's like the volleyball team has a different culture than the football team. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but that's because you've got different people. That's risky, right?
Mhm. Right.
So that's the missing piece is really looking at what is a thriving, positive, safe culture.
Right. And what does it look like implementing that in, it's been just long history of just that's just the way it is. Is it more from the government, or like how do we put these things into place so we
Mm.
can create this culture that you're talking about?
Funding helps, but I'll be
Mhm.
honest, some of the people that would create this stuff, like
Mhm.
similar to how you and I understand it, they don't get
Yeah.
it. They might just come up with more policies, right? So we have
Right.
to be
Mhm.
careful. So here's the big thing is the way that
Mhm.
I educate on it is when you hear something like if you're justifying anything in your coaching or as an athlete or as an org, well, that's just sport.
Yeah.
That's a red flag right there.
Mhm.
Or he or she's a good person, they're just old school, red flag.
Mhm.
Kids these days are soft. I need to toughen them up, red flag. Like
Yeah.
all of these things that I've gathered as ammo,
Mhm.
they people will the lingo, right? Chirping, like trash talking,
Mhm.
running of suicides, like all of this, we just
Mhm.
go, well, that's just sport.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the culture of sport, which has great things and some bad
Mhm.
things, like the
Yeah.
hazing, the bullying, the exercises punishment, the verbal abuse.
Mhm.
Let's get rid of the bad, keep the good. Then there's the
Yeah.
culture of your specific sport,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
There was things in soccer that are unique to hockey from
Mhm.
hockey. Then your club, then your team.
Right.
So the NSL as an example, just being
Mhm.
founded by Diana and crew, like
Yeah.
you have a direct experience. I can speak as a bit of an outsider, like
Mhm.
just a powerful culture of inclusiveness overall is what I
Mhm.
feel, right?
Yeah.
Like
For sure.
then when she called and said, I want to do safe sport education with every single team, that's
Mhm.
rare, just so you know.
Okay.
Like, and then on top of that, the second year now,
Mhm.
every single one of your managers and coaches reached out immediately.
Mhm.
That's rare. See, I
Yeah.
already know. And you'll have your issues. Like there's no league in the world that doesn't have some challenges. It's
Mhm.
impossible. But not one of the teams in the NSL went, "No, we're good."
Yeah.
So, if they had said we're good, that's when I would
Yeah.
be like, "No, you're not. What's happening there?" Right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, Dinah Matheson and having, you know, her put people in place to create this league is really important. And like I said, this is the first time I've had a safe sport meeting with you. And so, in how just how
Mm,
much of an impact that had on all of us, I can
mm.
say. So,
Oh, thank
I
you.
do I do think this is something that's really important, just needs to keep being brought up as an issue and something to, just put the athlete first and just create a better environment because like you said, that's just sports, they're soft. Like I've had coaches like, yeah, back in the old days or like, you know what I mean? Just all those phrases of on
Mhm.
how things
Mhm.
used to be. And so it's just I feel like it's just a long standing thing that's kind of ingrained in sports. And so
Mhm.
it'll be interesting to see how we can move forward, but I can already see that, especially with this league and, um, like you've said, it's going pretty well with the Northern Super League, so hopefully it just continues
Yeah.
to grow.
Yeah, there's a couple things just quickly. One is what you and I both need to do, because join me, is debunk the myth that happy athletes don't win. So stay with me on this one. It's like there's a myth that we have to toughen athletes up, put them through the ringer,
Yeah.
do all these things to see who the best is that will rise to the top, and that'll be
Yeah.
our champion. And in the meantime, we're losing thousands of athletes because they don't want to be here anymore because they're getting treated poorly.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. And I think the other piece is, like you heard me say this, and I try not to be old Allison Gen X here, but statistically, the Generation Z and Alpha's brains work incredibly differently. So when coaches will say the athletes are soft these days, even if I go, yes, they are, if you try to toughen them up, it doesn't work. And that's where you risk maltreatment. So you need to learn how to work with what you have and motivate them in the way that makes sense for them, that they'll respond to. So that's where coaches get stuck in. Remember, I said like coaching as they were coached, and my way or the highway, or this is how we do it over here in this country or whatever. The biggest thing they're missing is athletes up until the age of 25 right now don't do well. Like, I mean, they won't respond. Like, they won't play better if they're
Yeah.
treated poorly. Yeah, it's like it doesn't motivate you anymore, right?
Right. And being a parent now, you said like your son plays hockey, and just seeing that culture and, you know, your experience, how do you go about like being a parent in this sport now and having to, raise them in an environment where, hockey culture is very specific, and how do you just go about making sure they're in the right environment?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, like, this is real time. I'm leaving after this podcast to drive my son to hockey tryout number 82. But
Okay.
it's so interesting. My boys are strong players, and the questions I have that coaches are trying to recruit them are, tell me about the culture you're going to create. How do you coach?
Yeah.
This is how my son responds to coaching. I couldn't care less if they're triple A, double A, single A, or house league.
Right.
But if I tell you, I know if you're in a ruthless, cutthroat, you've seen this team where the parents are gossipy and toxic, where the coach is yelling, where the
Yeah.
kids are, they're going to go into that dressing room and they're going to bully each other. It's just a matter of time because they learn it from you. I could get very aggressive in this conversation. So for me, it's ultimately I'm trying to get into it. Obviously, like I am now getting into a big body of work with hockey overall, trying to shift the culture. Like
Right.
pray for me because it's going to be challenging. It's deeply rooted.
Yeah.
However, with my own children, I just very much monitor the teams that they're on, and I will not hesitate to pull them no matter how good that team is as
Right.
11, 12-year-old, 13-year-olds.
It's really good that you have that perspective and are able to probably even tell the other parents, any advice that you have and things like that. So I think that's really good. And so, if a young athlete or parent is watching this and feels like something isn't right or off in their environment, what advice would you give them, or what would you want them to know?
Yeah. Okay. So we will say call, like we'll get not specific enough. You'll hear things like, well, tell your parents. Number one, parents, any parents watching, your child you'll be the last person they'll tell, um, because they don't want to disappoint you. So don't get it in your head that your son's going to come to you. Um, Athletes will report to who they feel safest with. So that's the key message. So what does that mean within an environment, whether it's your team or a 10-year-old team? Is that everyone that works and volunteers with that in that environment as authority figure needs to understand what to do if an athlete discloses to them.
Right.
Are you tracking that? Like anyone should be seen as a safe person. What we
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
say is go tell your athletic director.
Mm-hmm.
And the Div 1 athlete's like, yeah, right. My scholarship's out the door if I do
Yeah.
that, right? Like, let's be honest.
Right.
So it's most common with mental health challenges and maltreatment that an athlete will disclose to a friend as well. So that even the athletes need to know what the proper course of action is. But that's a great point because I can always speak from my own experience. Like when this was happening to me, my parents would have been the last people I would tell.
Yeah.
I was so deeply shamed and embarrassed. So what I do with my own kids, they know that I am an open book and an open
Yep.
conversation for any of these things, but they also know that they don't have to talk to me about it as long as they're talking to someone about it.
Right.
If something were to happen or their own mental health, right?
And my last two questions, what do you hope for the future of sport, just working in safe sport and all of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot I hope for, and I've been at this for 7 years.
Mhm.
The progress is slow, but I also
Mhm.
respect sometimes I feel like I'm on an island trying to break down the entire culture myself, which sounds
Mhm.
sort of self-serving, but now you're here, welcome to my island. It was so good to hear from you because I was like
Yeah.
and I love that your team had a good feedback to how I
Mhm.
shared my education.
Right.
But what do I hope? I honestly hope that this I don't wanna make it as simple as saying this will all go away, but once
Mhm.
we actually truly understand that when athletes are treated well and they treat each other well, we will win more. You see where I'm
Mhm.
going with that? Like, once people
Yeah.
just it's just a belief shift. There is
Yeah.
no I get really fired up, but there's no science or psychology that tells us that a winning team has to be the toughest, most ruthless, most unhappy, most military style, like,
Mhm.
even the military is changing their approach now, so, like,
Yeah.
just if that whole myth is debunked,
Mhm.
and we actually know, which obviously lots of research now is coming out that
Mhm.
says when an athlete is having fun, treated well, whether it's national team, professional,
Mhm.
um, feels like they have a life outside of sport, can take a
Right.
couple days off and go
Mhm.
sightseeing instead of flying home the next day.
Mhm.
Like they're going to win more because they're going to want to be
Exactly.
there. So
Exactly.
that's the big thing. Yeah,
And
debunking the
it's
myth. Yeah.
exactly, and it's like I can speak to that to myself, like, when I'm playing my best is when I just feel free, it's no,
Mhm. For
toxic
sure.
environment or,
Mhm.
I'm just doing what I love at the end of the day, and I think that's really important just to continue to create those environments. And my last question would be, what would you tell your younger self?
Mhm. Well, I mean, it could go in different stages. I think
Mhm.
I don't want to cry here, but like I spent 10 years, you know me, and I'm very honest. I spent 10
Mhm.
years becoming the best athlete in the world, like
Yep.
hating myself. I'm
Mhm.
not trying to be dramatic, but like I had a lot of
Mhm.
self-hatred.
Yep.
So I used to say like you're enough, but
Mhm.
now I've shifted to like I would tell her like you're incredible.
Mhm.
Like, you get stuck being like you were enough.
Yeah.
And I had a long period of time, over a decade of really beating myself up.
Mhm.
Um Yeah, I would tell her that she's incredible, and I still struggle, right? Like, gosh, it's like life is a thing, right? Like, sometimes
Mhm.
I still struggle with my self-confidence and, like I told you,
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, and
Yep.
it's just the human condition.
Exactly.
But
Mhm.
yeah, and
Mm.
also to athletes out there everywhere, not to be
Uh-huh.
dramatic, but
Yeah.
what I'm on the other side now. Like,
Mhm.
just enjoy every day.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not like I told your team this, right? Like, I was a hot mess when I came 7th in the world at the Olympics because I thought I failed everyone.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
it's so you know how it feels. Wherever you go,
Yeah.
there you are.
Yeah.
People think, "Oh, okay, look at her. She's a professional athlete and she's in the NSL." And meanwhile,
Mhm.
you might miss one kick or have one bad game
Mhm.
and feel like you would have at 6 if that had happened to you, right? Like,
Right. Mhm.
we're still just human beings. So, yeah,
Exactly.
just enjoy the ride. It's
Mhm.
a blessed life when you have the right approach to it.
Right. And I feel like that's just such an important message to end on because when you're in it and people see you at the top, but you're not there within yourself. But looking back, it's like, wow, like look at all I accomplished despite everything that I've been through. Look at, you know, how much resilience that you had and were able to push through things and look at all the people that you're inspiring now and turning maybe your pain into your purpose and just being that person maybe you wish you had when you're younger. Ooh. So, um yeah, again, I just want to thank you for that because I think you are an incredible, like you said, you are incredible and amazing. And just thank you for taking the time out to do this with me today. I DM'd you on Instagram and you responded right away and sent your number. And we're just like so open. And so I think people like you are so important. And I'm just so glad that we were able to have this conversation. I feel like it's such an important conversation to have. So, yeah, thank you for all the work that you do. And thank you so much for being our last guest on Kick It with Ken.
Woo,
So,
made it.
yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
That's so exciting.
much.
Thank you so much for having me.